teacher, Professor Ramkrishna Chirika, Dean Research, Professor Anjana Munshi, Dean of School, Dr. Sunil Mittal, Dean of Student Welfare, Professor D.K. Garg, Head of the departments, faculty members of the Geology Department, Geography Department, and Environment Science Department, and my colleagues from the university, staff members, dear students, those are present here and also in the virtual. The Earth Day is an annual event. It started in 1970 to celebrate this particular day, celebrated more than 193 countries. And this is the opportunity where we can think of our Earth, where we live on. Theme of the Earth Day this year is to invest in our planet. And if you see the Earth of website, there it is mainly focused on accelerating the solution to combat our greatest threat and challenges to activate everyone, for example, government, citizens, businessmen, and academicians to do their part. In India, subject like art science is mostly taught at the higher academics, and it is important to bring this subject to the school level and educate aware our school children to know about Earth and different Earth processes and how important it is and how the different sphere of the Earth is interlinked and it is moderating our sphere. So in this occasion, it will be a great opportunity to motivate, to create awareness among the young mind about the Earth processes. Without taking much more time, I invite my colleague to advance this session further. Thank you everyone. Once again, welcome to this particular event. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jijan, for the welcome address. Now, may I invite the Dean of our school, Dr. Vijay sir, for introduction of today's speakers, Professor Vasquez.
Thank you, sir. So, the respected Padma Shri Professor Harsh K. Gupta ji, Chief Guest, Professor Ashok Sani, Guest of Honor, Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor R.P. Tiwari, all Professor Pashrika, Dean in Charge Academics, Professor V.K. Garg, Dean Student Welfare, all my faculty and dear students, specifically for the students who have come across from different schools to showcase their work on the Earth Day, specifically logos and other things. So I first of all, good morning, and I extend very warm welcome to all of you on the occasion of this Earth Day. So we all know the theme of the Earth Day 2022 is invest in our planet Earth. This is the moment to change it all, the business climate, the political climate, and how we take action on climate. Now is the time for the unstoppable courage to preserve and protect our health, our families, and our livelihoods. For Earth Day 2022, we need to act boldly, innovate broadly, and implement equitably. It's going to take all of us, all in business, governments, and citizens. Everyone accounted for and everyone is accountable to their doings on this planet Earth. So on this day, it's a moment of pleasure for all of us to have Padma Shri Professor Harsh K. Gupta ji with us. So on behalf of School of Environment and Earth Sciences, sir, I welcome you. And I have been given the task to introduce Professor H.K. Gupta. Dear students, it's a very difficult task to introduce or to read out the biodata of Professor Gupta in such a short time. So I will be very short, not taking much time only. Dr. Professor Gupta obtained his master's from ISM Dhanbad and PhD from Roorkee. He was to many key positions in the various national and international bodies, specifically Director Center for Earth Sciences in Trivandrum. Then he was Vice Chancellor, Cochin University of Science and Technology. Then Professor Gupta was also advisor to Government of India at various levels. Dr. Gupta is currently Raja Ramanna Fellow at National Geophysical Research Institute, Hyderabad. Academically, Professor Gupta is globally known for his work on artificial water reservoir, triggered earthquakes for developing criteria to discriminate them from normal earthquakes. So, apart from this, he has many other contributions to Department of Ocean Development. Dr. Gupta implemented several new programs such as in the entire EEJets, building out an Indo-Russian gas hydrate center at Chennai and many more. Dr. Gupta received the SS Bhatnagar Prize, USSR Academy of Sciences 100 Years of International Geophysics Award, then National Mineral Award, the Indian Geophysical Union Millennium Award, and Padam Shri by Government of India in 2006. So many other awards to his credit. So from this brief biodata, you can just have that to what stature the Professor Gupta is having. And we are blessed to have such a high statured person to be our chief guest. I am thankful to Professor Gupta for accepting the invitation and thankful to Professor R.P. Tiwari, our Honorable Vice Chancellor, who has given this opportunity to all of us to celebrate this Earth Day. So now I request Dr. K.K. to please continue with his.
Thank you, Dr. Nicholas, for the introduction. Now may I request today's chief guest, Professor, to deliver his talk.
Very good morning to all of you.
Slides.
First of all, thank you for this opportunity to be with you. And Dr. Arthur, the DC, is a very kind man. He invited me to Mizoram to give a communication address. Then he invited me to Sada University to give another talk. And now I'm here from Bolivia. So I'll start this by presenting a book to him, which is on Antarctica. May I present it to you? Actually, I'm going to talk about this book only. And I thought that it would be the right time to give a talk. Now, as we all know, that earth sciences are extremely important in the present context because for the very sustenance of our globe, our planet, we must understand how it works. And it is well understood by the study of sciences. So I'm particularly very happy that the university has got such a good number of young students. And I hope they get a little bit motivated after listening to me. And I have decided to talk about Antarctica. Why Antarctica? You see, some of one of the biggest have already projected that we must maintain so that the temperatures don't go beyond 2 degrees Celsius. And the best record of the past, that how the temperatures vary, exists in Antarctica. Because if you pour the ice cores from Antarctica, you get to know what happened up to 1 million years ago. Would you believe that the sea level was almost 20 meters higher than what it is today, some 15, 16,000 years ago? I would say if you look on the west coast of India, the west coast of India extended further than 200 kilometers. these are very interesting things. And Antarctica has an area of 40 million square kilometers. It is the largest continent in the world. It has an elevation of almost 800 meters. So it is the highest continent in the world. And the thickness of ice, it has been heated up to 5 kilometers, and still ice is there. So it's a amazing piece. 80% of Earth's fresh water is in Antarctica. If Antarctica melts today, the water level all over the sea can go up by about 20 meters. Imagine what will happen to all this water in the country. Now things are getting very bad. You know, in the last 25 years, 3 billion tons of ice has melted and broken off Antarctica. Out of this 3 billion, 1 billion ton came out in the last 5 years only. So India got interested in Antarctica somewhere in 1970s, late 70s and 1950s because India wanted to have a say in international matters concerning Antarctica and the world growth. And one of the requirements to do that was to have a permanent discussion in Antarctica where you can demonstrate that you can. Is it a caller mic? Okay. No, don't worry. Because I won't be able to see what I'm projecting. So, can this come up? So, we should be able to tell what exactly is happening. So, the first expedition to Antarctica was led in 1981 by Dr. Hasik, and that guy Polar City was a ship, which he took, and we went there, we were able to go around a little bit, and we did that. In 1982, the second expedition was sent to Antarctica, and Mr. Vietnam was a leader of that expedition, and they also did not stay much, and Polar City was used. In 1983, I was a Center for Science Studies, and there was a lot of proposals decided to do work in India. Now, I've been an earth scientist in the science proposal to set up 5 seismic stations in Antarctica to record earthquakes in Antarctica. Is Hindi better or English better? मैंने ये प्रपोज किया अपना 5 स्टेशन से लगाऊंगा और उन 5 स्टेशन से रिकॉर्ड ऐसा भी क्या हुआ कि मेरे पास डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ सोशल डेवलपमेंट से मिशन करने गया उन्हें प्रपोजल प्रेजेंट करना पड़ा प्रेजेंट करने गया और वैज्ञानिक मीटिंग करते हुए थे जो अपना प्रपोजल लेकर आए थे डॉक्टर कासिम को वो चेयर कर रहे थे मैंने अपना प्रपोजल प्रेजेंट किया और मेरे प्रपोजल प्रेजेंट करने के बाद उन्होंने कहा कि आपका प्रपोजल बहुत अच्छा है लेकिन ये संभव नहीं है कि 5 लोगों को आप दिया जाए मेरे उस टाइम में ना रिमोट रजिस्ट्रेशन रिकॉर्डिंग वगैरह को बैन कर दीजिए मेरे को 5 मिल जाएगा तो मुझे लगा हमारा मुख्य केस बात है कि हम अपना कॉमन डिसीजन बनाते हैं फिर वो ऐसे में निकलने लगा जैसे मैंने इतना बेनिफिट जैसा लोगों का फंसे आप एक बार समझ तो उस वेट करने के पश्चात उन्होंने मेरे को दोबारा बुलाया बोले हम आपका प्रपोजल कैसे निकालें बट यू एग्री टू लीड दिस एक्सपीडिशन आप इसलिए करेंगे नहीं इसलिए दिया नहीं था तो थोड़ा सा बोल मैं मेरे बात नहीं सुना What activities stands for here? Discipline और हमको भारत में बहुत काम कर रहा है
Voice not clear, sir.
Okay.
Voice not
So
clear.
फिर मैंने because I'm talking in Hindi. So प्रेरणा में आके वहाँ पे मैंने अपने पति को कॉल किया, अपनी दो बेटियां थी, एक 8 साल की थी, 11 साल की थी, उनके बच्चे को भी प्रेरणा के बारे में मुझे पता है कि सबको ऐसे हाँ ट्रेनिंग में मान जाओ, तो मैंने वो बात की डॉक्टर कासिम को कनेक्ट कर दिया कि मैं तैयार हूँ। तो कासिम साहब ने कहा कि आप अभी भी हमारे ऑफिस में आए और मैं एक 10 बजे ऑफिस में पहुंचा, इस टाइम में बाकी का क्वेश्चन था इससे बचने उस टाइम में बाकी का क्वेश्चन डेवलपमेंट जो था वो लोकेटेड था साउथ ऑफ, तो मैं जब वहाँ पर गुस्सा सब लोग खड़े हो गए तो मैंने कहा कि हम बता दिया तो वो जैसे ना बच्चे का लाइन से सीखना बहुत मुश्किल काम है।
इसमें नया शेर डाला
तो क्लास में कॉल किया और कहा कि शाम की बात हुई हम आपको लेके जाएंगे। आज ये मैं डॉक्टर कासिम एडमिशन से लेने गया, उन्होंने थोड़ी बहुत फ्री खुश नहीं की कि आपको करना है। तो वो बड़ी कि इस बार हम अपना सेशन सेलेक्ट कर रहे हैं ना, तो डॉक्टर कासिम बोले कि ऐसा नहीं मैंने आपको पहले ही कहा है हमारे पास मेडिकल एक्सपर्ट है किसी और देश के हाथ से अपन सेशन बनाए बोले मैं आपसे रिलाइज आपसे फ्री नाम से आपसे दिस मैं को सकता है क्या हो मैंने कहा कि आप पास में है तो सोच सकते हैं एक हफ्ते बाद एक हफ्ते मैंने
Sir, voice not clear. Not clear.
और मैडम ने मेरे से इसका मेरे को ज्ञान नहीं इससे मेरे को पता चला कि एक्सपीरियंस में बहुत मीटिंग का प्रॉब्लम और उसमें से हर सवाल को मेरे पास जवाब नहीं लेकिन जो भी मैंने किया then she just tries to इसी बीच में हम लोग ट्रेनिंग तो होता है बेटे कि जो हम सब लोग को ऐसे बेसिस को कवर करें उस सब के लिए वर्चुअल विषय काफी हाइपर है इस साथ में देवा पर चली जाती है और सबको 3 मैसेज मिल रहे हैं पहला बैच सेकंड बैच मेरे को था इससे कि मैं पहले वाले से 3 थर्ड बैच ऐसा तैयारियां हो गई और खबर लाई विषय जो है वो नवंबर में पहले से वहाँ पहुंची जब मैं 16 दिन के लोगों से बात हो रही थी तो दो बात बहुत मिस आ रही है एक बात तो ये कि ब्रिटिश का होल्ड तो मैंने नहीं तो आप गाने बहुत दूसरी बात मैंने ये बताई भारत में फास्ट प्राइस क्या होता है वेरी वेरी ऐसी है जो एंटार्क्टिका में चमकने लगती है उससे प्रमोट करती है तो जब हम पहुंचते हैं तो उसी फास्ट प्राइस के ऊपर हो जाता है उन्होंने मेरे को एक वीडियो दिखाया कि फास्ट प्राइस के बारे में इससे बड़ी होता है इससे बड़ी कैट नहीं होती एंटार्क्टिका में पड़ेगा और इससे बड़ी दो आदमी लेते और जैसे फास्ट प्राइस लगा इट इज नॉट मिसिंग और सिवाय वीडियो बनाने के वो देखिए ये सब बातें देखिए जब मैं पहुंचा गोवा तो मेजर नायर ने ही इंचार्ज ऑफ कंस्ट्रक्शन आर्मी के थे वो सारा इसीलिए मनी की बिल्डिंग से वो मलेशिया घुमाना ये पहला है बहुत प्यारी चीज होती है देखते बैठे होती है। अब बेटे मैं आपको बताना कि जो बोर्ड होगा शिक्षा उसमें हम लोग हेलीकॉप्टर ये हमारी सिटी फाइनेंस सिचुएशन है। इस के अंदर आप देखो ये सारी जो ड्रग्स है ना इनका ऑयल की हमारा परमानेंट सिस्टम बन गया। इसको चलाने के लिए हमको जनरेटर चलाने पड़ेंगे। जनरेटर चलाने के लिए $1,000 पड़ेगा। तो हम लोग फाइनली थर्ड को लिए और तो बचाया और हम लोगों ने पहला आइसबर्ग रोटेट किया है अराउंड 60 डिग्री साउथ में। What is an iceberg? Iceberg is a piece. अभी आप इस आइसबर्ग को देखें इधर की 5-6 मीटर अबव द वाटर है और ये
President Mother,
ये जब चेक करेगा तो ये फास्ट साइज है। जाके जाके एक बात का हम लोगों ने ये अनुमान लगाया कि एंटार्क्टिका के अंदर हम 10 से 60 दिन पाएंगे। इसलिए एक फास्ट साइज से शुरू हो जाएगी और अगर हम टाइम से बाहर नहीं निकले तो बारिश जो आइस का उन 60 दिन निकल जाते हैं वाइट आउट। व्हाट इज द वाइट आउट? जब हवा बहुत चलती है तो आइस पार्टिकल्स दे गए और मल्टीपल रिफ्लेक्शन होता है सन का और इतना जॉन होती है आप ही को और दूसरा क्या था वो सब करते करते मैंने सबके से मिलकर ये डिसाइड किया कि हम जो है रिकॉग्नाइजेशन में सिर्फ एक आफ्टरनून कर सकते हैं। इससे जाते जाते और आप एक स्लीपिंग बैग को घुसाओ और वो बाहर से बिल्कुल फ्रीज कर देता है जिससे कोई आपको आंसर करता है निकालने के लिए। अच्छा हमारा मोटिव ऑपरेटिंग क्या था कि एक हमारा ये हेलीकॉप्टर है तो ये शिप के ऊपर आकर ऊपर बैठेगा हम वो अंडरस्टैंड नोट्स में लगाते हैं और वो ढूंढते सामान ले जाएंगे। क्या हुआ 29 दिसंबर को 3 दिन के बाद लोड लगाया उसमें एंटीबॉडी फाइट नहीं मिली मूव करना शुरू कर दिया। सो लोड जो था एक पुल्ड हेलीकॉप्टर। अच्छा एक बात आपको बताओ इसके अंदर तुम देखना पड़ेगा लोड जो है वो नीचे रखा हुआ है तो जब फ्लाइट होगी तो अगर इसमें ऑसिलेशन हो गया दैट इज वेरी डेंजरस फॉर एविएशन। तो जो हेलीकॉप्टर का फ्यूजलाज है उसी का दही उसको काट के उसमें ऐसे कर सकते हैं जो फ्लाइट इंजीनियर को देखता रहा नीचे की ऑसिलेशन ठीक है कि नहीं और बताएगा। तो ये जब हेलीकॉप्टर क्रैश हुआ so I launched a smaller helicopter चला फिर 10 लोगों को लेकर आओ मैंने बोर्ड भी लॉन्च किया और ये लोग वहाँ पहुँचे और आप ये देख रहे हो सिचुएशन ये हेलीकॉप्टर उल्टा हो गया है और जो टैक्सी क्लास विंडो थी उसको तोड़ के बाहर निकल गया। अगर वो टैक्सी क्लास विंडो नहीं होती तो इस तरह से टूट जाते थे। तो ये लोग बाहर निकले और ये जो हमने नीचे करा तो एक आदमी उसको पकड़ा हेलीकॉप्टर ऊपर था दूसरे आदमी ने उसकी आगे पकड़ ली वो चल दिया। एक अच्छी बात है कि हेलीकॉप्टर जो था ना शिप पे क्रैश करता शिप पे क्रैश करता सारा ऑयल था अगर आइस पे क्रैश करता तो भी लोग मरते। तो पहले एक आदमी गिरा तो दूसरा आदमी गिरा। So I stopped that operation and फिर मैंने सारे लोगों को I got them out by the rescue boat। अच्छा ये सब होने के बाद है उनको डॉक्टर्स को बता दिया ये हुआ है तो वो लोग तैयार थे वो एकदम से लोगों को लेके शुरू में चले गए जो इसके लिए दिया करते रखा उनका उपचार चल रहा था। उसमें मेरे को जरूरी हुआ कि मैं डॉक्टर कासिम को बताऊं क्या हुआ है। तो बेटा उस टाइम में सेल फोन वगैरह कुछ ऐसे होते नहीं थे, तो जो शिप का ब्रिज होता है ऐसा से सारा वहाँ पे फोन था, वहाँ से मैंने कॉल किया डॉक्टर कासिम को। और तुम ये सोचो कि वहाँ पे क्या हालत होगी, सारे लोग रो रहे थे, किसी का कुछ हुआ था। तो मैंने डॉक्टर कासिम को बताया कि ऐसा हो गया है। तो बड़े बहुत बुरा हुआ, अब आपको जो है वो प्राइम मिनिस्टर को बताना चाहिए। मेरे को आगे सोचने पड़े 10 मिनट बाद ही प्राइम मिनिस्टर की कॉल आई। प्राइम मिनिस्टर की कॉल आई, पहला सवाल हर्ष
Nothing is audible. Not audible.
आपको पता है स्विमिंग पूल ये कितना होगा? इसमें ये 15 मीटर और 10 मीटर 20 मीटर 300 स्क्वायर मीटर, तो उससे दुनिया साइज का एरिया में ये सारा काम चल रहा है। और ये राफ्ट फाउंडेशन 1.5 मीटर बर्फ होती है, उसमें लकड़ी की राफ्ट लगाई है, इसका काम करना शुरू करिए। और ये हमारे स्टेशन का ढांचा तैयार हो रहा है। तो ये एरिया है, इस पे हमने आप देखो This all is being done in Antarctica, सारा सामान चारों तरफ बिखरा हुआ है, ऊपर हमने तरीका बनाया। मैं उस वक्त गया रशियन स्टेशन देखने के लिए, और एक काम मैंने क्या करा वहाँ पर कि हम जो है अंटार्कटिका में नीचे सॉक्स पहनते हैं, ऊपर से जीन पहनते हैं, कॉपी पे लाल कलर के थर्मस से पहनते हैं। मैंने वो थर्मस नहीं पहने क्योंकि आई वांटेड टू शो दिस स्काई। कभी-कभी मेरे को बहुत ह्यूमिडिटी में स्पॉट नहीं होता। जवानों का कहता है कि कम आपकी बात नहीं। ऐसा क्या है कि कोल्ड इंजरी हो जाती है। कोल्ड इंजरी क्या होता है कि आपकी पीड़ा करी, अगर पसीना आ गया, आप बैठ गए, जब बैठ गए तो उसका बर्फ बन जाता है पसीने का, एक इंजरी से। तो जो भी कोल्ड इंजरी बनाता है ना उसको शीट पे बेचते हैं। और फिर दूसरे को लगाते हैं। थोड़े बाद कोल्ड इंजरी से पानी काम शुरू हो गया। क्या ये सारा काम चलता गया, फिर ये शेल वाइज बैठ हो गई, तो ये मतलब फास्ट राइस कर हो गई, शिप शेल पे पहुंच गया, सारा सामान सजाया लगा। 26 जनवरी 1984 भगवान की कृपा से मेरे को फ्लैग होस्टिंग के बहुत टाइम मिला, लेकिन जो घर उस दिन फ्लैग होस्टिंग करके नाटक में आया वो दोबारा जो रशियन स्टेशन पे जो मिलने गया तो उनसे बात हुई थी, मैंने बताया मैं स्टेशन बना रहा हूँ, वो हंसने लगे। क्या आज तक दुनिया में किसी ने भी किसी देश में एक विंटर में एक समय में स्टेशन नहीं बनाया, तुम क्या सवाल होगा? अब वो आपको जब आया सेंट्रल पर्सन ही वाज सरप्राइज्ड टू सी द स्टेशन। ये स्टेशन की सारी तरतीब है, मैं बात बहुत लंबी नहीं करता हूँ, तुमको स्टेशन का करके दिखा रहा हूँ। ये हमारा मेडिकल लैबोरेटरीज कम्युनिकेशन सेंटर, टॉयलेट्स, और बीच में हम बोथॉट भी गए। बोथॉट एक और माउंटेन है, वहाँ पे इतनी तेज हवा चलती है कि आप देख रहे हैं हमारा दिन का बहुत जोरदार प्रॉब्लम। वहाँ पर जब गए तो हमने हेलीकॉप्टर का इंजन ऑफ नहीं करा कि बाय चांस ऑफ हो गया तो मुश्किल हो जाएगा। सो फाइनली द स्टेशन वाज रेडी बाय 25th of February 1984। अब बड़ा क्वेश्चन ये है कि स्टेशन हम लोगों को छोड़ के आया, फिर मैंने डॉक्टर कासिम से बात करी, वो इज योर डिसीजन, आई वाज इन शॉक, बट आई जस्ट वाज टॉल, ठीक है। मैं बहुत कोशिश में क्या करूँ, but to our good luck, we had a very strong storm. Blizzard है यहाँ, और वो 3 जगह 25-26-27. Fortunately, मेरे कैबिन में कहा आपको फर्स्ट मार्च को चलना है, और 1984 में फ्राइडे के दिन थे, 29 दिन, 28 में फर्स्ट आया. तो वो स्टेशन में सर्वाइव किया blizzard. So I took the decision to leave those people behind and bring them back. These are all the people sitting there. ये स्टेशन दक्षिण में मोदी बनाया, और ये किसी जॉब प्राइवेट देखा मैं सबको पहले प्राइवेट देखा. फिर लास्ट डॉक्टर टाइम मॉरिशस में हम लोग पूरे वहाँ पे प्राइम मिनिस्टर वगैरह आए, बहुत बड़ा कवरेज हुआ समझे गए. ये मैं इस टाइम में मिशन के बोर्ड में, ये हमारा टोटल रूट है, एंटार्क्टिका का जाना, वापस आने का, और इसकी जो बहुत चर्चा हुई, हेल्थ के ऊपर सब जगह इसके बारे में चर्चा हुई, क्योंकि एक नया कीर्तिमान बन गया था. दुनिया में किसी ने भी, किसी देश ने भी एक एंटार्क्टिक समर मतलब समर जनवरी में स्टेशन तैयार करके ऑपरेट नहीं करा था. ये हमने तैयार करा, ऑपरेट करा. इंदिरा गांधी को मैंने प्रेजेंटेशन किया, उनके उन्होंने सब देखा और बड़ी खुशी हुई. इसके बाद मेरी तबीयत काफी मैं परेशान था साल में, कभी ये हो गया कभी वो हो गया. मैं ये सोचता था कि अगर स्टेशन में कुछ हो गया, किसी की डेथ वगैरह हो गई तो लोग कहेंगे कुछ होगा. फाइनली 1985 में वो लोग वापस आ गए, प्राइम मिनिस्टर, एंड आई वाज अ वेरी हैप्पी मैन. तो ये दक्षिण गंगोत्री क्यों हुआ? जब मैं लौट के आ रहा था तो मैंने देखा कि कई जवानों के एक रॉस्टर टोस कोई जगह से, मैंने कभी आपको बताया कि मेरे को किस तरह अगर मैं आपको बता देता हूँ शिप पे भेज देती वहाँ पे बैठे रात को 10 बजे मैं जनरेटर ऑफ करता था, इससे वो काम बंद हो. तो आप तो रात होती नहीं, अंधेरा होता नहीं, तो जस्ट टू मेक देम रेस्ट आई यूज्ड टू डू दैट. सो अब मैं सोचता हूँ कि हेलीकॉप्टर क्रैश और नहीं होता तो स्टेशन उस हेलीकॉप्टर क्रैश होने से हम लोग सबके लोग मतलब सब एक ग्रुप के काम करें, और ये वर्ल्ड वाइड बनने का कुछ लोग मेड इट पॉसिबल टू हैपन. ये जो इसकी तस्वीर है 1988 में आधा स्टेशन क्या है स्टेप अनाउंस किया, तो बिहारी वाजपेयी जी के पास मैंने सारी बातें प्रेजेंट करी 2008 में, उन्होंने आगे तीसरा स्टेशन बना. तो 2005 में मैं कपिल सिब्बल साहब को देखे क्या है, तो मैं सेक्रेटरी बन गया. बस वेरी हैप्पी टू गो टू मिनिस्टर का तैयारी था, और ये कपिल सिब्बल साहब मैजिक स्टेशन के ऊपर अपना मैजिक स्टेशन में आज दिन में मैजिक है 3 मंथ्स. तो ये मेरा स्टेशन जो मैंने बनाया था वो पूरा प्रश्न कर दिया. तो I'm just like all that. I got very excited. These are beautiful scenes. Auroras. Solar eclipse. Total solar eclipse. ये हमारा नया स्टेशन बनाया है भारत. तो ये किताब मैंने जो अभी आपके वैसा साहब को दी, this was released by the Indian Inauguration Center. अच्छा, ये मेरे को तो बहुत खुशी हुई, ये बैक आई फ्रॉम पेज टेक्निकल ऑफिसर. वो क्या बोले कि 1992 में वो लीडर थे और अक्टूबर का महीना था, तो मैत्री में आग लगी. आग लगने से उनका एलिवेटर होता खत्म हो गया और एक जनरेटर खत्म हो गया. क्या करेंगे, 2 महीने बाकी, 2 महीने लास्ट में वो जनरेटर. सो दे टुक द रूट to Dakshin Gangotri, dug upon 6 meters of ice, entered that station, वहाँ पे एनवायरमेंट था, चीज़ों खराब होती और वहाँ से वो एक जनरेटर भी है, and with that we manage the rest of the business. Well, I would like to close my talk, and I am very thankful to Professor Diwali for giving this opportunity, and of course, Jitin Patnaik ji, सारे फैकल्टी के लोग हैं, और सबसे बड़ी बात आप सब बच्चे. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the excellent talk. I'm sure that the talk will inspire and motivate all of us. And I'd like to thank you again for sharing your experience. And it's our privilege to witness and listen the excellent talk. So may I request our Honorable Vice Chancellor, sir, to felicitate today's guest for the speak, Professor S.K. Thank you, sir.
Professor Hans Gupta, Dean in charge of ethics, Professor Surika, Dean of School of Professor Kar, Dean of School of Environmental Sciences, Dr. Sunil Mittal, Professor Sanjeev, all dear teachers from this university, students, and specifically students from schools who have made it possible to come to this university and showcase their concern about the Mother Earth. We have presented a very wonderful talk, a very inspiring talk. What he has narrated in 30 minutes, we could imagine how much thought process has gone into the entire expedition that Professor Gupta led, and also the labor, the pain, and but the enthusiasm for unfurling the tricolor of India in Antarctica and taking the credit of setting the very first station in Antarctica. That pleasure, when he was talking, I would see that that pleasure still remains on his face, and that pride moment that he gave to the nation. So I compliment you, sir. In fact, he's in hurry to fly back to Hyderabad for a very important meeting. He's a terrific orator, and he never talks which the audience cannot appreciate. And one of the basic trait of a good orator is that the person is able to establish connect with the audience. So that's very important. And I have listened to him on a couple of occasions, and I found that very easily he establishes connect with the audience. And whatever ideas he wants to put forth, that is really received by the audience, and they appreciate and are benefited immensely, and that is what he has done today. Because of paucity of time, we could not listen to him. In fact, several other things that he has done to science, technology, and innovation in the country. He has immense contribution, and still at this age, he is devoting his total time for the cause of science and technology. And we are really fortunate to have you here, sir. And I'll request you on some other occasion where you can spare at least 2-3 days to interact not only with the teachers of earth science, but also from across the science, because science has no boundaries and no limitations, and now it is all interfacing of these different branches of science. The major concern today before us is how to save Mother Earth. The very idea of Earth in our country, right from our start of our civilization discourse, is that we consider Earth as mother. And all the components of Earth, when we call it Earth system science, all the components of Earth are given, the stature of God. And the idea of connecting different components of Earth system science, or even the entire solar system, was to to galvanize our mind and our thought process that they are very pious and we should never try to pollute them. And see, when we started the journey of civilization discourse, our thought process was very broad, and it was not confined to myself or yourself, but it extended to cover the entire humanity, and not only humanity, but also all innate things that are there in the universe. And so we cared for the well we are all living. Living things on the earth or non-living things, not only on the earth, but the entire universe, the entire cosmos. So our thought process extended to that. And now, for the want of more and more pleasure, we are creating things which are very disastrous and harmful to the environment, to the entire ecosystem, and to the entire universe. And that is what is the this day, which is very significant in our life, that on this day we sensitize ourselves and all our young brains to really understand the functioning of different components of the earth system science and how our activity collectively and individually is harming all these components, and how we can say that is that is the basic purpose of celebrating Earth Day. And today I'm happy that we had students from schools who showcase their concern, what ideas they had to save different components, and what ideas they had to arrest the civilization discourse that we are having today, where there is no limit of our needs, and we want to have more and more as compared to the earlier part of our culture where we believe less is more, and now believe more. Our belief has turned to more is less, and there's no limit for our luxury, and that is why we are destroying the various components. We are disturbing the balance, and as I said today, that the major concern is pressurized, and we have to make all efforts. And there is several conventions going on, and countries are presenting their blueprints as to how to have zero emission and several other things. But government efforts are not alone. This has to this has to capture the imagination of all of us. Then only we can save our mother earth. I'll not take much time. So Buddha has to leave. So I'd like to thank him, and I'd like to say that we will welcome him again in this university, and we have wider interaction with the faculty and students. Thank you, sir, for making it possible. And thank you to Geology Department and the Patrai and all his colleagues for taking out the school of organizing this beautiful program, and also my thanks to all the students and the school students who have made it possible. Thank you. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. Source of inspiration, and like request you to inspire us, keep on motivating us, and show your blessings and loves, and take us to the next step. Thank you, sir.
Raise another person.
Bye bye. Have a nice day.
सबका पेन ड्राइव नहीं ये मेरा ये आपका है? वो वाला सबका
The talk will be continued. Please be remain seated. Let me have the privilege to introduce the next speaker, today's guest of honor, Professor Ashok Shahani. Professor Shahani is one of the tallest personalities, geoscientists in the country, and his achievements and the recognition is huge. And in cutting short, I would like to just share some of his recognition. Professor Shahani obtained his MSc degree in geology in 1963 from Lucknow University, then PhD in 1968 from University of Minnesota, USA. Then he was appointed as lecturer at the Lucknow University in 1968. Then became a reader in 1979 in the same university. He was the Humboldt Research Fellow at the Paleontology Institute in the University of Bonn during 1977 and 1978 in USA. Then he became a professor of paleobiology and also in charge of scanning electron microscope facilities at Punjab University, Chandigarh during 1979 and 2003. Then he continues to be emeritus professor at the Punjab University. Then became INSA senior scientist. Professor Salani's academic and research achievement is well recognized throughout the country and even throughout the world. And he did his doctorate dissertation on early mammalian evolution and dinosaurian diversity from the Judith River Formation of Montana, USA, and it was published by the Bulletin of American Museum of Natural History, New York. Later, he worked on biomineralization, specifically on the structural and functional adaptations in mammalian dental enamel through time, vertebrate paleontology in the context of paleogeography and geodynamic model of plate movement and biotic response and evolutionary implications during the rifting, drifting, and collisional phases of Indian plate. He has authored more than 20 publications and also guided 25 doctoral students. Professor Sahni's award and honors is enormous. Few of them, just to mention over here, he was elected as fellow of the Indian Academy of Sciences, Bangalore, and Academy of Sciences for Developing World. He was also nominated as honorary life member by the Society of Vertebrate Paleontology USA. He also holds the rare distinction of being associate in 20 Geological Society French and is also fellow of the Humboldt Foundation Bonn, USA. He was awarded the National Geoscience Award for Excellence in 2009 by the Government of India. Apart from this, Professor Sahni contributes other activities also in the country, some of which I can mention over here is that he is fully engaged to popularize the science by setting museums and natural historical parks across the country. He has also served on the INSA Council. So with this brief introduction, I'd like to request Professor Sahani to deliver his talk online. Thank you.
सर उनसे पूछते हैं हम शेयर करेंगे साथ शेयर कर रहे हैं
Sir, am I audible to you, sir?
Yes.
Should we share the slide or
Yes.
share from you?
Let me just try.
Sorry, sir?
Can you see it? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you see the slides?
Not yet, sir.
That's coming, sir.
Can you see the slides?
It's coming.
Hello?
It was coming.
Can you see the slides?
No, we cannot see the slide.
Oh yes,
Then may I suggest that you start? You can hear me, so there's no point wasting time. Can you put on the slide, please?
sir, could you stop sharing? We are sharing from here.
Yeah.
Is it visible, sir?
Yes, it's visible to me.
Thank you, sir. Please, sir.
So, thank you. Firstly, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for the invitation, for giving this talk, and thank you for the introduction. Today is a very special day on Earth. It's an Earth Day, and my talk is basically targeted for the younger members of the audience that I can see uh, in the auditorium. So I've titled my talk "A Wonderful but Fragile Earth." We all know that it's very wonderful, but many of us don't know that it's very fragile. It was fragile before man came, and even after man came, it's become even more fragile. So, the title of my talk is Our Wonderful but Fragile Earth. One thing I think is, that is very clear is that the earth has always, no, don't change it. The earth has always changed. It's constantly changing. And we must understand, if we have to understand what the earth is going to do in the future, we have to understand the past. And one of the things that a paleontologist does, he tries to understand the past so that he can look at the future with some confidence. I would like to give you some figures. The earth, as you know, this especially for the students, is about 4.65 billion years old. So a billion years, I think, is 10 raised to 9. So the earth was born more than 4.5 billion years ago. And it may surprise many people that within a billion years, life arrived on earth. How it arrived, why it arrived, is uh, a question that has not been answered. But the paleontologists, once it did arrive and you did get fossils, then paleontologists and sedimentologists can track what happened in history. And this is what I would like to do during this talk. A man who is now dominating the earth by changing not only the surface of the earth, but changing the atmosphere came uh, about 2 million years ago. And other events that have shaped the current scenario on Earth is one of the main events was industrialization that happened about 300 years ago. But I think the important point to understand is that about in the 1950s or 1960s, no one was really bothered about where the earth was going, whether it was being polluted or not polluted. It is only in the last 40, 50 years that our sensitivity to the fragility of the earth, to how we are destroying the earth, how human activity is destroying the earth, that has come to the fore. And on Earth Day, I think uh, we must realize that up to now, man and humans have messed it up, and it's our duty now to try and fix it. there are many problems that are going to I shall talk about. Can I have the next slide, please? Can I have the next slide? If you can't hear me, please let me know because I can't tell. So one of the problems that in the first photograph, it looked as if there's a lot of water on Earth. But actually, if you look by volume, you'll see that the water on Earth is actually by volume, if you look at the volume of the Earth, is very limited. All the water is this blue dot. Freshwater glaciers is that small dot. And this very, very small dot, which you can hardly see, which is actually here, is fresh water, the water that we drink. So if you look at this image, you get an exactly different feeling from the first image that there is a problem, potable water is a problem, and we should look at all aspects of the problem uh, uh, to make our drinking water safe. So this can be an issue in the future. It is already an issue now, but in the future, this will contribute. The lack of potable water will contribute to one of the uh, facts that the earth becomes more and more fragile. Next, please. Next, please. So, why is it fragile? Well, one of the things that everyone must understand that it's the solar energy that drives the engines of Earth, right from photosynthesis to climate change. Because all our energy, the energy that we get on Earth, is basically solar energy. And the solar energy input to Earth's surface is quite a lot. It's 342 watts per meter squared. So there's a lot of solar energy coming. The Earth produces relatively very little energy, 0.06 watts per meter squared. So this is to say that our major source of energy is the sun. So if anything comes between the sun and the Earth's surface, this will either tend to make the Earth cooler or it will tend to make the Earth hotter. So the position of the sun is very, very important, and all that the radiation should come constantly on the surface. That is also an important issue. Next, please. But life on Earth, actually, you must understand, was established in the first few billion years after the Earth originated. So let me just show you the uh, parameters of this diagram. Earth originated 4.65 million years ago, and relatively soon afterwards, you had the origin of life. Around, it was 3.4, but now it's, I think, 3.6 or 3.7 billion years ago. But about a billion years, only a billion years after the Earth originated, you had the origin of life. Then one event happened that has shaped our destiny, shaped the destiny of the Earth. And this is basically known as the Great Oxygen Event. Around 2.4 billion years ago, blue-green bacteria and algae started the process of photosynthesis, and they started streaming through the photosynthesis process oxygen into the atmosphere. Before this, there was no ozone zone, there was no hardly 1 or 2% oxygen on Earth. But after the advent of photosynthesis, life took off, and you had, as you can see, rise of lowly life bacteria up to about this point. From here onwards, from about 1.6 billion years onwards, you have algal life. You can see but not too many species, but it still was quite apparent. Algae grew, and then around this time, 5.4 billion years, you had the advent of multicellular life. So in between, you had other events. And one of these events I've shown in blue. That is, during this time, the earth became covered with snow and ice. So this is the time, what I show in blue is a snowball earth. Now, there are many theories of whether the snowball earth was responsible for multicellular life and later life. One of the papers published in Nature says that what the snowball earth did, it lasted for quite a long time, as you can see. And there were two events in the early part of Earth history. What it did was that most of the nutrients that were in the oceans, they got concentrated. And it is believed that the snowball earth may have actually encouraged or boosted the origin of multicellular life, the one that you see in green here. So these first few billion years were really very, very important in laying the foundation of life on Earth. And one of the main events was the event of photosynthesis and how oxygen got into the atmosphere. Next slide, please. Next, please. I'm going to try and show it to you again because I think this is very, very important. So again, this is a log scale. This is 4.65 billion. This is where we are now. And as I was telling you, this is the origin of Earth. Then the oldest rocks, erosion had started, the first organisms, and then this event that I'm talking about. That is the photosynthesis event. Photosynthesis starts. Also, the ozone layer develops. There was no ozone layer before this time, but there was life. So, just to make the point, there was life even though there was no ozone layer. And as you can see, on the path of life, you had eukaryotes developing, animals with skeleton, land plants, land animals, dinosaurs, and here we are now. So, in the early part, if you look at the y-axis, there was hardly any oxygen. And as time progressed, here you can see that the percentage of oxygen, look here on the vertical axis. On the vertical axis, oxygen became more and more, and it is because most of the uh, respiratory systems are based on oxygen, on air, that when oxygen was streamed into the atmosphere, you got uh, animals that could walk, run, large animals, large plants, and life actually progressed because of the fact that some lowly blue green bacteria a long time ago started the process of photosynthesis. Next, please. Next, please. I'd like to tell you what fossils are because the paleontologists can only tell you the history of life if you on the basis of fossils. The fossils are the remains of life that lived in the past or of their activity. I will try to explain this. So here you can see, this is very easy to see. Uh, just to try and ask a question from the students, the school students. How many fish do you see here? School students, how many fish are there? Anybody reply? Is there any answer? Well, since I can't hear you, I have to tell you the answer. You have two fishes. The large fish is eating the small fish. And during this event, fossilization took place. This is from Gujarat. This is an insect in amber. And it's about 56 or 55 million years ago. But as I said, fossils are not only the remains of the whole fossil, but also of their activity. If you look here, this is a very famous uh, uh, footprints of dinosaurs in the Cretaceous of Bolivia. Look, there are two dinosaurs walking side by side. This is one dinosaur. This is the other dinosaur. So they were a happy couple. The sediments show that it was a beach deposit. And you can see that out here, they're out of step. This uh, this dinosaur pushed the other one. Otherwise, they were going in a straight line. It got back to this normal here. So this is also a fossil, and you can learn a lot about the behavior of any animal by looking at the by their activity. It can be footprints. It can be what they excrete. Any activity. Next, please. Next, please. I'd like to show you some fossils from India that may excite you. Uh, these are in my personal collection. This one, of course, is in the Chandigarh Museum now. As you can see, this is a lobster from the Eocene near Barmer. It's very beautifully preserved. So it's not only a question of identifying the animal, but you can say something about the conditions of burial. The sediments show that it was a lagoonal mud, a lake mud. This is very, very fine particles. So this is a lobster. And those of you who have gone to Bombay or who live in Bombay would see that from many sections in Mumbai, this one is from Woodley Hill section, you get frogs. This is a frog, and just to drive home the point, you can basically take an X-ray of the frog, and see how the bones are oriented. So fossils provide a lot of data on the past history of life, and that is what is the main basis for predicting whatever is going to happen in the future. Next, please. So, coming back to the fragility of the earth, I'd like to show you this diagram. The one on the left shows you a red line. The red line basically shows you how temperature on earth has changed through time. On the y-axis, this one here, on the vertical axis, you have something like 400 million years, and we're here, 0. So if you look at this wavy line, the wavy line, as I said, represents hotter, cooler, and the reference point is the black line, which is the mean annual temperature on Earth today. And the mean annual temperature on Earth today is about 15 to 16 degrees Celsius. So for the greater part, greater part of the last 400 million years, the Earth has been very hot. But there have been some incidents. One I told you about the Snowball Earth, but there have been other ice ages when this red line has actually dipped to the cooler side and the Earth was an ice house. Just to again drive home the point that you may be finding it very hot these days, but if you look at the red line again, we are basically again in an ice house. So, in an ice house, which we are living in today, you will see that the Earth is divided into a number of thermal zones: very cold, less cold, medium cold, hot, very hot, and then basically it goes all the way to the North Pole. India, if you can make out, is here. So this is the temperature distribution in an ice house Earth. But as I said, for the greater part of the Earth was a greenhouse. So it's important to know what a greenhouse Earth looks like. People are alarmed when people say that carbon dioxide levels are rising. They are rising, we are responsible. But in order to have a perspective of the rise of carbon dioxide, you have to look at the past. You can't look at one point and not the other points. Let us look at what a greenhouse Earth looks like. In a greenhouse Earth, which lasted for about 350 million years, there was no polar ice. You have polar ice today, but the point that is that I must make again and again, that change is constant. For the greater part of the earth, there was no polar ice. There was no South Pole ice. There was no polar ice in the North Pole. What you had was a large uh, zone in red, that, which is quite contracted here, the equatorial or tropical region. So, what does it mean for dinosaurs? What does it mean for reptiles? In which earth do you think reptiles can live in a better way? The answer obviously is in a greenhouse earth. Why? Because reptiles are cold blooded and it is easier for them to move from one place to another place in a greenhouse earth than it is for cold blooded animals to move in ice also. So there are many things that you have to think about when you look at the past history. Next, please. Next, please. I'd like to show you and spend some time on this. You may recall, you may recall that I had discussed in one of the first slides the first few billion years. Well, I'm going to go from that point 500 million years. I've changed. It is not billion years now. This is 500 million years or half a billion years. Half a billion years to the present. This diagram, please go back. This diagram shows you how life behaved when it started, when the big bang of life, when multicellular life arrived on Earth. So the vertical axis tells you how diverse the life was, and the horizontal axis gives you the time. So what I've done is I have the bottom diagram, the coordinates are the same. 500 million, 500 million. Present day, present day. What I've tried to show you how life has risen, how life has fallen, risen again in the context of two very important elements of Earth: carbon dioxide, shown in green, and oxygen, shown in red. So if you look at life, you will see that basically it rose, then it flattened off, and then there was a sudden depletion of life. So at this point of time, and this is again to tell you how fragile the earth is, the earth lost nearly 96% of all its species. What does that imply? That implies that we are basically from the survivors. We basically evolved from the 4% survivors during this time. This is around 250 million years ago. And after this catastrophic event, life again started. But you will see, if you look at the diversity of life, you will see these notches. First notch, second notch, big notch, other notch, another notch. This is the point. This is the point where dinosaurs and 70% of all life, not here, were lost on Earth. So that's a big number. Here, 96% were lost. So you may well ask, what is causing the fragility? There are many reasons, and I will explain this in greater detail. Let me just say that this big loss, 96% species loss, is believed to have been caused by the sudden combustion that exhausted the oxygen in the atmosphere. So the earth lost most of its oxygen, and because of that, it lost most of its life. The reason here is slightly different, and we will come to that. Coming here, you can see right now, carbon dioxide is around nearly 4. This is the old slide. So when this graph was made, it was around 2. It became 3. Now it's around 0.4 or something like that. But again, 500 million years ago, the carbon dioxide was 20 times, 15 to 20 times 15 to 20 times the value today. Life was going on. So even though it's not a good thing that carbon dioxide is rising, because basically that means the earth is warming. But if you look at the earth history, you will see that carbon dioxide in atmosphere was 15 to 20 times for a large part of the early part of history, even when life was existing. Oxygen, on the other hand, suddenly rose to its present 20.9% atmospheric levels. I'd like, I can't hear the students, but I'd like them to, in their minds, to try and give me an answer. What may be the reason that the carbon dioxide levels suddenly fell down around this point? They took off again, but carbon dioxide levels were never the same as in early Earth. They progressively became, the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere became less and less, whereas the oxygen levels. So, if there's some student who knows the answer, maybe he or she can tell me why carbon dioxide levels suddenly came down here in India. Yes. So, if you have this idea, when you're looking at present day parameters, you will get another perspective. Next, please. Next, please. So, just to tell you a little bit of the work that I've been doing, we've been working in a coal mine in Gujarat. So, this is what a mine looks like, and this beds are 52 million years, and the beds here are 54 million years. And I will just tell you why this is of great interest. This is the time when the earth suddenly warmed up. It today, if the mean annual temperature is around 15 to 16 degrees Celsius, during this time, 54 million years or 56 million years, the mean annual temperature was something like 6 to 8 degrees. 6 to 8 degrees warming up. But you still had life. Next, please. Next, please. So what you get in those beds is resin from trees. You look at, you can see this. The resin from trees is known as amber. This is amber nodules. You may have seen that sometimes if you hit a tree, it exudes resin. But why is it important for us? Because if you look carefully in this resin, you will find a number of fossils trapped. This is a 54 million year old spider. This is a flower. These are ants. So, as I said, fossils not only tell you about the climate, the environment, but they tell you also about the sociology of the animal behavior. You can see all the ants are together. So, a number of scientific facts can be derived from this. Next, please. So, a number. So, this is a twig, a leaf. Mind you, this is 54 million years old. If you look carefully, you can still see the structure of the twig. You can still see the attachment of the leaf. You can see an insect very similar to an ant. And here you can see parasitism. So this is a parasite still attached to the insect. A number of things you can make out. And these help you in pushing back your ideas, your perspectives not only about the lineage, but also about the behavior, which is important. Next, please. Next, please. One very important issue, one very important point. People in India are very fond of dinosaurs, so am I. But one of the main evolutionary miracles in India, documented by fossils, is the origin of whales. I will not say anything more because this is not the time, but I would like young students to go back and try and find out more data about the evolution of whales. Whales originated in India and Pakistan, something like 54, right around the same time. And it is, they dispersed from India and Pakistan and spread all over the world. So this is something that is of great importance and great significance as far as India is concerned. Next, please. Coming back to dinosaurs, because young minds are always fond of dinosaurs. This is one of the few mountain dinosaurs in the Indian Statistical Institute in Kolkata. It's large. You can see this is a neon light. Uh, you can make out about 12 feet high and white. It's, it's one of the remarkable dinosaurs, plant eating dinosaurs recovered from India. So, next, please. Next, please. Ne- so, many people think that reptiles, or especially dinosaurs, are very peculiar animals. They're not. They just happen to be large. And uh, in one of the museums that I organized in Chandigarh, we have a life-size model of a dinosaur just to show the soft parts of the dinosaur. So dinosaurs were like any other reptiles, except they were large. Next, please. Next, please. So one of the remarkable things here is that you have nests of these dinosaurs. Here's a nest. This is the close-up. You can see the eggs. You can see the eggs here. There are many places in which nesting can be seen all over peninsula. From Tamil Nadu across peninsula. Next, please. Next, please. The young folk may be interested. So how do we know that they're dinosaurs? We know that they're reptiles. You can look at the shell structure. This is the shell structure of a dinosaur. And this is a section cut through here, tangential section. Embryo has to breathe. And you get air canals. These are air canals that provide oxygen to the growing embryo. This is what the air canals look on the surface. Here, 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 here. Next, please. Next, please. So there are two theories. I'm coming to the end of my talk. There are two theories. One, of course, is an asteroid that caused extinction, about 70% to 65%. This asteroid landed in Mexico, in a place known as the Yucatan Peninsula. The other theory, of course, was that volcanic eruptions happening at the same time in India may also have been responsible. But I think in the last 5 or 10 years, it is now very well established that what may have happened was the asteroid hit. Next, please. When an asteroid hits, you get a blast wave, you get tsunami, powerful seaquakes, water evaporates, rock evaporates. And when rock evaporates, you get global darkness because all the particles, water vapor and the particles of rock, they go into the atmosphere and they block sunlight. In the third slide, I told you that Earth's surface is dependent on the solar radiation. Once you block the radiation coming from the sun, the food web cycle, the plants that require sunlight will die. And if this darkness lasts for about 3 or 4 weeks, then the whole vegetation system will disintegrate. And those feeding on the plants, they will also die. So it is believed that it is not only the fact that an asteroid struck, but the aftermath, the consequences of this striking of the earth, which I'm trying to show you, actually killed the dinosaurs. I think last slide, next please. Next please. We'll skip that. Next please. Next please. This is, I'd like you to notice or pay attention to this because this data is very, very recent. It was the site known as Tanis in North America was discovered about 2 years ago. But there are a number of papers, scientific papers, that now are coming out that relate what happened in the sediments now found in Tanis to the asteroid strike. So the asteroid hit here. And what happened was that you got a huge tsunami going all the way here. So much so that all the fish, the dinosaurs, other reptiles, they all got jumbled up in sediments here. Not only that, you had limbs, dinosaurs, their limbs were cut off. This dinosaur is very well preserved. You can actually see the scales, but it is like it was the foot was ripped off the body by the blast wave that I was telling you about. But the clinching evidence, one of the clinching evidences is that within all these fish and within the flesh of the dinosaur, you find these what are known as cosmic spherules. These are spherules that actually represent melted iron-rich spheres that would have landed when the asteroid struck this point here. This is the man who found it, who found the locality and who studied it. So this, I think, is still a developing story, but this is actually very interesting because it shows a jumbled up collection of fossils with these spherules in the skin, in the skin. So that's a pretty good evidence. And last slide, last slide. You know, we are always, let me reiterate, we humans have messed up our planet. Let's undo the damage. let me just tell you, if you look at the horizontal axis, 400,000 years, 300,000 years, 200, this is where we are now. The earth cooled, it warmed, it cooled, it warmed, it cooled, warmed, it cooled. This is where we are now. So, up to for about 300,000 years, the cooling and the warming was very regular. The cooling and the warming was very regular. But man arrived here. Recorded human civilization is about 10,000, 12,000 years old. So as soon as man arrived, he messed up the planet. It's not only carbon dioxide. He killed many of the large animals. He killed many of the large animals. And so he upset the biological equilibrium. So now, theoretically, if you went by this regular pattern, we should have been facing a cold, another ice age. But now we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know whether we're going to get another ice age, whether the ice age has been delayed by something like 50,000 years or more, or it's going to come or it's not going to come. But carbon dioxide levels have shot up, mainly because of our. So thank you very much. I think this is the last slide. Thank you very much for listening to this. Thank you.
Any query from the student side? Any questions from the student side?
That's so many schools.
Sir, few questions from the student side. So, would you like to interact with the students? School students.
Some question?
What is the question?
Give the student the microphone.
Yes, they have.
Why don't they come to the podium? Let them come to the podium.
Morning, sir.
Please come over here. Please come over here.
Stand here.
Good morning, sir. My name is Abha. I'm from DPS. And sir, as you were speaking, I came up with a question. Sir, as you said, the asteroid hit and it affected all the dinosaurs. So I just wanted to ask the question: if the asteroid hit at one place of the Earth, how did it affect all the dinosaurs all over the planet?
That's a very good question. Firstly, I'd like to thank you for asking a question. If you looked at the last or second last slide, I showed you that when an asteroid strikes at one place, the particles of the rock and of the water vapor, they spread into the stratosphere, into the atmosphere, not only in that locality, they spread all over the earth. And therefore, the solar radiation all over the earth is stopped. And when that happens, the food web cycle, the vegetation throughout the earth, that becomes extinct. And therefore, it's not only dinosaurs. 65% of other life forms other than the dinosaurs also became extinct. This is a very important point. That is not only the dinosaurs. 70% of all life, including the dinosaurs, became extinct. And the reason is that all over the earth, there was a dark cloud that stopped solar radiation. And because it stopped solar radiation, vegetation could not survive. And when vegetation could not survive, plant eaters and those carnivores that ate herbivores, they also died. So that is what happened.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. No more questions.
Uh, so, no more questions from this website. Now, I would like to just thank sir by briefly just recovering the ideas shared by sir in his talk. It was like reading a comprehensive book on the life on the earth. Sir started spoke with the composition of the earth. Then he spoke about the sources of energy. Then we talked about the beginning of life. Then changes in the atmosphere and sources of low early bacteria in the earth. Then he also talked about the behavior of fossils, particularly in India. And he also talked about changes in temperature, particularly across the India, and the related movement of reptiles, and the origin of whales, and also the recent findings on the impact of the creator. Uh, he has covered elaborately all across the spheres of basic sciences towards the origin of life. So, sir, we would like to again thank you for your time and your energy and everything to us. And we'd like to thank our HOD, J.K. sir, to felicitate. But through online,
Sir, will
sir, we will be sending this by post.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Goodbye and thank you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Now there will be a high tea and group photograph in the reception area, then followed by model presentation by school and college students. Then followed by geological exhibition by our MSc geology students. Everything will be at the reception area. Then followed by prize distribution that would be held here. So you all are requested to come back at 12:45 in this hall. Now I request the students, school students, to proceed towards the reception area for high tea. All school students.
and for a announcement for we join that 12:45 and then after lunch so online you will to thank you for
Also, after the lunch break, there will be an online lecture. All are requested to join the lecture here in this hall at 2 p.m. I will
Sorry, sir.
extend our thanks to those who joined through online, and again, thank you from the Department of Geology for joining with us and be part of this celebration. Thank you once again.